and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. You missed about 2 minutes of that and sort of fast-forwarded us on that. Welcome to the show, Cinque Brath.
Yes, thank you
and, of
for
course,
having
Brother
me.
Leroy.
Thank you, sir.
And we're going to talk about the 60s and the type of hairstyles that we wore, and you realize that we had, you see my African kufu. Kufi. And so we're going to talk about our history and melanin, and I've got some good stuff for you this week. But give me a little roll-in of a little 30 seconds. We'll show you a little the natural hairdos that we had back in the day, and sort of Martin Luther King era. All right, that was 60s. All right. Now, this is an affair that's coming up this Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday at the Dwyer Cultural Center in Harlem, basically on 123rd Street and St. Nicholas Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have what we call a Naturally 18. That's Naturally 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna commemorate 56 years since the first natural show in 1962, which was Naturally 62, the world famous Naturally 62, in which A-Jazz debuted the Grandassa models, the first models of their kind. You know, these models wore natural hair, they didn't have on makeup, and in that time and in that era, that was big, that was huge, because you did not see that with black women for the most part, you know. And A-Jazz stands for African Jazz Art Society Studio, which primarily, initially, dealt with organizing jazz artists, putting on cultural shows with jazz. Then they decided, because of their influence from Honorable Marcus Garvey and then later Carlos Cook, that they were going to take the whole idea of Black is Beautiful, instead of when we had the shows with Miss Universe where they were in a bikini and everything, they were going to have models strutting their stuff. And one of the early I believe it was Frank Adu who trained the models then at that time how to walk runway, how to present themselves, runway fashion. And it turned out to be a very big thing. In fact, if you get New Yorker magazine from 2 years ago, 2016, you look in there, it has the 8 events that make New York City the fashion capital of the world. And out of the 8 events, there's only 1 event listed from our community, our people. And what does it say? Naturally 62. And it's the debut of the Grandassa models, the first of their type, the pioneers of the Black is Beautiful movement. You know, and the picture that we initially just showed is part of the exhibit at the Schomburg, the Black Power 50 exhibit. But it doesn't focus on just the Grandassa models.
Are we going to have any Grandassa models there?
Oh, all of them that are still alive will be there. Just about all of them who are still alive will be there. Yes. Yeah,
any famous names?
Well, one of the most famous names is Ann Tripp, the voice from WBLS. As you know, the Grandassa models and WBLS had an amazing float on Sunday. And Ann Tripp, one of the Grand Marshals, emceed the event in the parade. and she was giving the listener in the audience some of the history of the Grandassa models.
Wow.
You know, and ironically, of course, she started giving a lot of history as they passed 125th Street.
Of course.
And 125th Street, right where the street corner had been renamed after my father, Lambe
Right.
Braff.
Right,
And
right.
she, coincidentally, when she really started giving the history, was right there. It started out at 113th, and
Right.
you know, initially it was, you know, a template of its conversation. She started really to go deep and educate our community, you know, at around from 118th and to 125th. She really went into the history, and she's been, as a former Grandassa model, she's helped to be one of the big people pushing this event for Saturday.
And the event is where?
It's going to be at the Dwyer Cultural Center, as the flyer says, and this is actually the same language. Well, let me go back. It's at the Dwyer Cultural Center, and it's in affiliation, of course, with the Lambe Braff Foundation, us,
Right.
and the Harlem Arts Alliance,
Which is
Vosa
Vosa.
Rivers, your good buddy.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah.
So,
We grew up together.
and it says Naturally 18, the original African Kofor and political cultural extravaganza designed to restore our racial pride and standards.
Great.
You know, and you know, during the Black Panther movie time, a lot of our community got the first chance to really see some of what we talk about Kofor, these different hairstyles. See, Kofor
Well,
is
that's
not
5
just,
years later, though.
yeah. I
After
mean,
this.
well,
After
Black
this.
Panther came out about
67.
No, I mean the film. I'm sorry.
Ah.
I mean a Black Panther movie.
Oh.
You know, when you started to see in Africa, you started to see a
Okay.
lot of the different
Okay.
groups and very fashion statements being made. That's
Okay.
in the spirit of the Grandassa models in Naturally
Okay.
18.
Fabulous.
That's in that
Fabulous.
same spirit. Because not only are we just talking about hair texture, which was important, we're talking about different designs, whether they were braids, whether they were asymmetric, all sorts of hairstyles that if you put in coiffure and you see, it'll say hair, it used to mean hairstylist, and then it became known to be as hairstyle. But when you put in European and then you put in African coiffure, you're gonna really see with the young people today some of the really exotic sort of cuts and ways.
It's coming back?
I think it's
been
back.
back.
I think it's back. In fact, Caribbean, they just had, not before Afropunk, there was just a festival in Brooklyn. And there's an article where they talked about the influence of the Grandassa models on the younger generation, even though the younger generation had not really known the history of the Grandassa models. It was in Brooklyn earlier this year, and it was 30,000 young ladies out there.
30,000?
30,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, I actually still have the story.
Wow.
On, you know, social media and on the
goodness.
phone, but yeah. So the natural hair style is big. It's big, but
That's good.
it's important to put these slogans or what you call hashtags into context.
yeah.
You know, and these things didn't pop out of nowhere. They have a history. They have a beginning, and there's a reason why they happen. And so those women who laid down the foundation and the groundwork for this, we're gonna be presenting, we're gonna be commemorating them, because their influence is not just in the United States. Their influence was global.
Okay.
In fact, certain Grandassa models, we have magazines in Africa where we can show you, and there will be part of the exhibit where it says this, this in the United States, American Negroes are going back to the natural. Look at these beautiful models. You know, we have the actual magazine covers and titles with these Grandassa models on there. So it's amazing that what we do here culturally and politically, how it affects the planet.
Always has.
Oh, it always has. Even I've heard stories when for example, when I was in Zimbabwe, I met some of the freedom fighters, and they talked about all of the writings of the people here. It influenced them, kept them going. They read Garvey, you know, they read Malcolm's story. They influenced by everything that's happening here. So that's not just with politics, but just from their magazines that we have from that time. We see it's also with the fashion and things that we were doing here, and opening up the door to, you know, the whole idea of being black and proud of the way we look, our features, etc.
Amen.
Because what the initial members who are still alive of AJAS will tell you, when they first did that first Naturally show in 1962, they didn't know what sort of response they were going to get. In fact, Robert Gums, who was one of the co-founders.
Why so? 62?
62, yeah, no. In fact,
Well,
it
we were
was
super proud back in those days,
no,
right?
not in 62.
Oh, well, we were there. Now you're talking people
Well,
were there.
I'll say this. They have the, he's going to talk about it, but they thought, he was unsure. He said he thought some people were buying tickets just to come and laugh because they had not really been used to seeing our women with their hair natural and being presented as stylish and beautiful in 1962.
That's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the part about them, the
when
part
did you
about
start
them.
wearing afro?
Well, it's different for the men, though. The men were. We talking about the women. The men always been wearing natural hair and you know.
Well, I got a wife in the back. She was Angela Davis fan. I mean, she had a big fro
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
60s.
Angela Davis, in fact, one of the Grandassa models, Black Rose, who was the first hairstylist to have her own business and putting out products with black hair owned by black people,
Yeah.
especially in Harlem. She used to do Angela Davis hair. She did Cicely Tyson's hair for Roots.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Black Rose was the first of these women who were on the scene with this hair, branding the hair and the whole specialization of the hair. But in 1962, if you go back, in fact, I have a Time magazine or Life magazine in my bag. It's a collector's item from even much later in the 70s, and they were talking about women had really just started in the early 70s more with the afros, but the Grandassa models preceded all of that, started all that. We're talking 62, you know, because even the black exploitation films, most of those are in the 70s. You know?
Peter Bailey tells the story of a protest out in front of Johnson Publications on 6th Avenue, and how quickly Mr. Johnson responded. But he tells a better story than I do, because right after that demonstration, as it relates to hairstyle and that sort of thing, and the fact that they were, I forgot who they put on the cover that the protest was stimulated by, but soon after, maybe 2 issues after, there was a black woman with a natural. I can't remember her name, but Peter Bailey tells the story very well. The event Saturday is a very important event culturally and historically, because if I have a daughter or a grandchild, if I went to 125th Street and got their braids in and all this other kind of stuff, well, that's on the outside. It's the information that they need on the inside, and they can get this just by being in and among these women who were wearing naturals, who were wearing braids later on. And it gets a chance, gives the parent, the mother or the father, the opportunity to have their child interact, ask questions. Now, the clip that you played of Martin Luther King, the last point that he made was making black people, I'm paraphrasing, seem worthless. Seem worthless. And that is your coloration, your hair, your lips, the way you walk, the way you talk. And naturally, 62 was a pushback, as the phrase goes today. It was a pushback. It was a rebellion against being made to think that we are less than, that our women are less than. So here's the black woman being put out front in a respectful way, and about people coming there and making fun. That wouldn't happen because I was at a distance from Naturally, but I wasn't going to be messing with these black guys in that organization. That up here, I wasn't going to be messing with them. And it wasn't even about
What year we're talking?
This is when they came out. I'm in Harlem just like you are, but I didn't go to the event.
Okay.
But later on, the club that I'm was in, the Squires Limited.
Yeah, the Squire. Yeah.
What we did, and this was in 62, 63, the black movement, we began to incorporate a value system from the black movement. And we give these dances, we would have a calypso band, we'd have a rhythm and blues band, or a salsa band, like Johnny Pacheco and them. But what we did, we made the decision to have these black dancers in, black African. They weren't African, they were
dressed up.
I can't tell you the name. Ted Wilson would remember the name. But
Big dancers?
No. It was a different group, and we incorporated them in the mix. And we were thinking that some people might laugh and that sort of thing, but they were riveted, man. Nobody. In other words, what we did was introduce this act into the mix, and naturally, 62 was introducing us to a value system. Rose, Black Rose. That's where I went to get my afro. And you waited. You would wait. There was a line there. She had a barbershop and whatnot. That she was in the barbershop right on 7th Avenue. That's where it was. Beautiful sister, very knowledgeable. Don't take no tea for the fever, and black. You understand? And talk black, not no dumb stuff. But the other point that I wanted to make is that the New Yorker magazine, the fact that it's one of the 8 events as relates to setting New York on the map for fashion, it bears witness once again as to how we are observed.
Yes.
Here's an event taking place in Harlem, little old Harlem, but someone takes note of it from the outside. And you've had that experience with this show, et cetera, you know.
Sure.
But the summation of what I want to say is that the people watching should think very carefully and put aside some time and come to the Dwyer this coming Saturday. And of course, Brother Sinke will give the logistics and whatnot, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah, and this is the cover of that New Yorker magazine. It said what we wore, and it's highlighting the history of fashion in New York. And then it says the runway shows, and who do they highlight? Grandassa models.
That's real.
So starting in 1903, then the next event they put in New York was 1914, 1943, then 1962, Black is Beautiful. Then 1985 up to 213. These are the events. So we
Is that going to be at the Dwyer?
Well, this is
some of that history.
Yeah, this history. Well, you know, part of this history right now, in the museum, the city of New York, the museum on 105th Street and Fifth Avenue. Yeah, they have an exhibit right now with the Grandassa models. My uncle Kwame Brathwaite, the photographer, all of his photos are in there, and they can see some of the fashion from the different eras and the different times.
I must go to see that.
Yeah,
that's an amazing museum.
Yeah.
People aren't hip to that one.
Yeah.
Fifth Avenue and what?
It's around 103rd. Yeah, it's around 103rd Street.
Fantastic museum, man.
It is.
People aren't hip to that one.
But some people take advantage of museums. Sometimes we don't.
Like me and my great-grand went to the Met, man, and you see the Egyptian collection. I mean, that is another phenomenal.
I tell you, you know, Brother Leroy, I mentioned one of the AJAZ members told me he thought some people might be coming to laugh, but it's interesting at that time, again, the influence of the Grandassa models, because when Eldridge Cleaver, who was, of course, the Black Panther Party Minister of Information, when he was in Soledad prison, he wrote a letter to the Harlem office of AJAZ. It was directed to my father, who was then the president of AJAZ, talking about how blown away he was to see black women with natural hair and never seen black women in this fashion or highlighted in this way. He particularly was infatuated with one of the models who's now passed, Jean Gums. Actually, Jean Gums is the sister of Robert Gums, one of the AJAS members, and he's also a board member at the Columbia Rare Foundation. But Eldridge Cleaver, in this letter from California, this is before he ever wrote Soul on Ice, which is very interesting. Because anyone who knows the history of Soul on Ice knows that Eldridge Cleaver, by this time in '68, said some of the most hateful and destructive things about black women in Soul on Ice. Okay? He talked about how he would jump over, I can't even use that language, but you know, I can't even use the language. I can't even formulate myself to articulate our women in that way to get past one, to get to a white woman. You know, he said all of these things that people still, Eldridge Cleaver, Soul on Ice. I mean, you get it now. People still talk about it in chat groups, and some people, they'll never forgive him for that. But years earlier, when he first saw the Grandassa models, he was saying none of those things. He was like, this is fascinating. This blows me away. And at the time during the day, he had been in Folsom. So even when he was in prison, you know, it was a different time, different way. He was blown away by the impact of seeing stylish women being presented in their natural, hair and their natural look, and they were not trying to model themselves after white women. They didn't have on wigs. They didn't. Their hair was in a natural state. So this was a big.
Well, we have the same job to do now. So hopefully people will come to this event. But I want to take us back to some of our history, the history of melanin. You know, this ingredients that gives us our complexion.
Oh yeah.
And this is from Hidden Colors 2. You know, I always reference Hidden Colors, so they have the info that we need to be aware of. All right, item 1.
I think if you talk to Dr. Welsing, she'll tell you this is about genetic annihilation or genetic survival, okay? It's about genetics. Who will survive America? Who will survive the world? Whose genetics will hold up? What is going to be the genetic, or the genotype that's on the planet 1,000 years from now? Will it be white? Will it be brown? Will it be black? And so you find that the elements of the human family that find themselves suffering from the ecology that we're in, they're struggling to survive and to be able to maintain themselves. All nations, European nations and America, white Americans, are at minus birth rate right now. Not zero birth rate, where they're keeping up with the natural death. They're at minus birth rate. And so that's why there's so much emphasis on artificial birth creation and other ways to have babies and make babies that are beyond the normal. And you'll also find that this adopting black babies, the Haiti thing, getting the children out of the Central African Republic and Chad, adopting Filipino babies, Latino babies by the white community on such a high level, it is to infuse their gene pool with the melanin.
A few years ago, the president of Chad, a man by the name of Idris Deby, he had a group of French charity workers arrested after it was found out that they were kidnapping children from that area. Now, Deby accused them of stealing the children from their parents and planning to sell the children to pedophile rings up in Europe. He also accused them of possibly planning to kill the children to sell their organs. Now, this is the president of Chad saying this, and this was a big scandal with the Chadian government and the French government. So we need to understand everything that's going on with people going into Africa trying to get these children up out of here. There's a war being waged on melanated people, and melanated people, people of color, should realize that a war is going on. A lot of melanated people do not realize that this war is going on, and this war is going on an educational front. There's a spiritual warfare, there's a medical warfare, there's a prison industrial warfare, and there's an economic warfare being imposed on people of color, especially in America.
That's just a little, that's not the one I wanted to run, but it makes you aware of what's happening with Trump as president. See, this buffoon, I keep calling him buffoon, but actually it's a blessing for us to realize how ignorant people are. I mean, being black in America, you get to see the buffoonery of people that don't understand what it's like to struggle. Like white privilege, and I've always said on this program, we are the spiritual people of the planet. Mm-hmm. Until we get rid of the demonic spirit in all of us, because we have that demon in us, because we're in this surrounding, and all the things that have been done against us. So that's why we need this pride and be exposed to our truths and what we're really about. This is just a slight example of what we went through in the 60s. But here we are in 2018, 2018, and we just went through 9/11, which was 2001. The biggest lie of the 21st century, 9/11. And now we come up with this buffoon in the White House after being blessed with an integrated society. I don't know, Obama was half black, half white, which I thought was a blessing from God. Because I always thought integration would work. I was brainwashed to believe, Martin, you gotta love everybody, and that possibly people would see their buffoonery and start to treat each other as human. But greed and selfishness always dominates the planet. And as we see that, again, going back to taking our kids, because they know the force of us as a people. All right? Give a comment on that, and we'll go to melanin. That's the next clip I want to show.
Well, I personally think when it comes to melanin that there's a brother named Lalia Africa who talks about
Oh,
melanin.
I know Lalia. Oh,
yeah,
man, my man.
And he really goes into the power of melanin, why our pineal gland produces melanin, and why he even gives a reason when he talks about melanin as to why we hear music differently, because we have more melanin in our eardrums, and how it helps us in our system. It's all throughout our system.
Okay.
It's all throughout our bodies. So the way we hear beats, and they always say that we were a musical people, etc., but we process sound differently because of melanin. There are a lot of advantages to having melanin in your body that we don't even realize or talk about. And when we talk about Black is Beautiful movement and Black is Beautiful, until we a lot of times understand the science behind why some of these things happen, sometimes it's just a saying to us.
Whether it's called melanin or something else, black folks have to realize that we have a unique DNA, a unique existence.
Right.
And the naturally shows that were put on, going to your comment about the man in the White House, which is a distraction for many of us, for most of us. When we begin to look inside, past the need to put on a bleaching cream, past the need to wear Lady Gaga shoes as soon as we see Lady Gaga in an Emmy award, or in other words, these big shoes that you wore, not you wore, that women wore for a season and a half, breaking their ankles and stuff, and now they don't wear them no more if they got sense. But it's initiated by people we look at not as equals. This is the point about integration. Integration might work if we looked at one another as equals. But when you deal with an enslaved mind, a mind...
White supremacy.
The flip side of that is black inferiority. When we buy into black inferiority, which is the hairstyle, I need to do this, I need to do this. I mean, when black women consider getting implants and stuff. I mean, that's the epitome of somebody else's mind working. Implants in the rear, implants up front. I'm saying, you don't
White
know.
women are getting implants in their lips.
That's what I'm saying. So when you're dealing with, when that's a condition, in my opinion, of somebody else's mindset, somebody else's standard of beauty. When we get past that stuff,
But we've always been the standard of beauty, right?
Yeah.
In the 50s with the fishtail.
the
skirt.
black man is guilty in not saluting the beauty of the black woman. I'm going back to the 60s, before, as I began to evolve out of a Negro mentality. And not that I had Playboy at home, but we would talk about how a black guy would be married to a black woman. He have a Playboy magazine. He's looking at a white woman with implants. I mean, we know they implants now, and they were implants back then. He's looking at a white woman who has black features.
Yeah, right.
A white woman who has black features. He's got the 100,000% goods right there at home. But he's looking at a Playboy magazine.
White women with big lips.
Well, just for the record, so they know that Brother Leroy is not plagiarizing Ann Tripp, because she said these same things during the parade route for the Grandays. Yeah, and he was not there. He did not see it. But she said the same thing in regard to the implants and the beauty of the black woman, and
and dying with implants.
Right.
Oh, when you see Kim Kardashian being a hit out here with the booty, I mean, that's just black all over. And she's with a black man, and
well, here's the thing that is in my brain. When we began to look, this is on the melanin, what we produce in the pineal gland, the intuition that we have, the spiritual picking up on vibrations that we have, right? That when we get past somebody else's standard of beauty, that's one piece. And then somebody else's standard of success, measurement of success, measurement. Getting past that mindset and begin to look inward and begin to embrace what we have as a people, which forces us to go into the history of our family. Because every black person in America today comes from some kind of fantastic ancestry. No matter what kind of condition we're in today, I'm talking about individuals, financial, whether we think we look ugly, our ancestors got us to this point. So we should value the life that we have and begin to research our granddaddies, our great aunts, as far back as we can. And if we can't do that, know for a surety that they got us where we are today, and we owe them the debt of getting into a consciousness that will take us and our children to another level. So
And was an opportunity in where you were at the time?
I'm sorry?
It was an opportunity, like you and I came up here in New York. I mean, the opportunities here in New York weren't any place else on the planet.
That's a blessing.
Especially in the 50s. I mean, and it came to the 60s. You guys, I left Harlem in 1960, January. So I didn't get to enjoy that part there. I was off.
Well, you was in the Marines,
I was in the Marine
right?
Corps, January 60 to January 64. So I missed all that. I missed all that. I was telling somebody upstairs how I was in the Philippines in 61. I was 200 pounds, 21 years old, and I'm in the Philippines. And I was like the only black around. That's a Marine. You know, nobody was. Most black people were smart enough not to join the Marine Corps. I mean, because that was a Southern thing, the Marine Corps. So I'm in the Philippines, and I'm by myself most of the time. But I could take care of myself. But I would go into this country bar in the Philippines, Olongapo, Zambales. And the prettiest one in there came up to me, because they had told people that, you know, I was only black in there, that black people had tails. And this girl came in looking for my tail. I thought
What year was this?
61.
Wow.
And you guys would join you. I'm in the Philippines, they're looking for my tail. So that's the difference in where I was in 61.
That was the experience of black soldiers in Europe.
Yeah.
And we had the benefit of interviewing one of them, not by phone. He called.
What year? No, you're talking about the 30s, 40s.
World War II.
World War II.
And
okay.
he'd come into a village in Italy, and the villagers came out, you know, the mayor of the town, to greet these American soldiers. And the children had come forth, and they was looking at the back of this man. He said, what are you doing? And the Germans had put up a poster in that town showing a black pilot, because you had the black airmen,
Tuskegee Airmen,
Tuskegee Airmen flying
right.
at that time, and that was a history, a living history. So they had this big billboard showing a black man flying a plane, and his tail was coming out. So the brother said, "This is a brother. He lived in Lincoln Terrace." When we did the communicators, this is when we begun to do the communicators. But anyway,
this is after Wayne Grace.
After Wayne, yeah. No. Wayne was still alive at that time.
Did you know
Wayne was
Wayne?
still alive.
No, but I'm a communicator too. I came. Brother Leroy had me on the show. I was there for many years, so I know the history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the looking inward, which Hidden Colors does for us very, very well, and then an appreciation of Martin Luther King, his presentations when I get past the misdirection that I was suffering from in the 60s, because we looked at Martin Luther King as an Uncle Tom. When you listen to this man is a reservoir of history, our history, and humanity. The man is absolutely on point. He just had his way of doing what he did and dying for it. But that doesn't leave the audience without the responsibility of doing something to further the consciousness that's needed within our families, our children, our grandchildren. I guarantee you this, if you were to walk the streets of Harlem or Bed-Stuy, you would be surprised at how many young girls in a carriage has a white doll today in 2018.
Yep.
Well, let's go to the melanin one. We'll get the importance of melanin. Play number 3, I think it is.
Changing the color of the actual paintings of the Africans on the wall. There was an entire report that came out how the scientific excavators in the temples of Kemet were lightening up the images on the wall, the medu neter. So you have black images, and they're using chemicals that actually turn the black image tan.
Professor Smalls told me when he went to study over there, he said the reason why we over here in the West are so caught up with ancient Kemet is because the seeds of Kemet, after Kemet was destroyed, all were driven to the south and to the west of Africa. And during the time of the slave trade, the strangers were the ones that they gave up first. So the people who actually are the ones that were brought over here were the remnants from ancient Kemet. They too, the people of Mali and the people of these areas that you're seeing with the Dogon, they say that the Dogons themselves are the forgotten parts of those tribes that actually ended up or who were driven out of ancient Kemet.
The Dogon were a group of Africans from the West Coast who had in fact been able to achieve a degree of astrological superiority and dominance that we really don't see a contemporary for or precedent for other than what was achieved in Nile Valley civilization.
And people began to chase the Dogon to examine them because you couldn't figure out how these so-called primitive Africans would have knowledge of astronomy, particularly the white dwarf star Sirius B, that Western astronomy itself is only coming to grips with. And so the Dogon have developed a kind of, I almost said infamy in the world. In fact, there's even a book called The Sirius Mystery, and it's about how the Dogon, these primitive Africans could have knowledge of a star system that's invisible to the naked eye. So the Dogon are black.
Actually, that's the show for next week. I've got my Rollins mixed up here. Let me speak about the Dogons for a minute. We talked about this. I think we had a show on it once before.
We talked about this.
But see, this is another amazing point about black people. Now, we have an African tribe in the middle of nowhere that can tell you about a solar system that you can't see with the naked eye. Now, we had an argument before about whether this knowledge was brought to us by beings from another planet, a solar system, a serious mystery, which I've gone over. I've known these facts for years. I actually read this book in the 70s, and there was no doubt that this stuff existed at a time when knowledge was readily available in New York here. I mean, you could go to all kind of stores. You had stores with all kind of information. There was a Warlock store on Fifth Avenue off Fifth Avenue on 19th Street that had every amazing book on the planet. And these were readily available to it. New York sort of shut down after 1980.
You talking about Wiser's?
Wiser's on 8th Street and on Broadway. Wiser's, there was another one on 19th Street.
We don't have that many bookstores no more. Now we got game shops.
You don't have the knowledge. You know, we start burning books, and the devil started burning books and making money, and like Trump started. So, but I wanted to play this melanin piece. Let's try another one. We'll be right back at you. All right? See if I can get this melanin.
The monument that we know is Stonehenge. A European writer by the name of Gerald Massey said in one of his books that Stonehenge was built by an African man named Maury.
Wow.
You have anything else there? Well, if you can find another one, come back to it.
It's so funny that you bring up melanin, and we're talking about black is beautiful.
Right.
Because you know, melanin plays and has a big role in two of the biggest stereotypes about black people. You know, our ability to dance and everything. Because,
soul.
Right.
Soul
as I
energy.
Said, that soul. And
the
reason,
this piece
according,
explains.
Right. Well. I know
that scientifically.
Right, and that's what I was going to go into. You know, we're talking about the melanin in the eardrums, and even with our sense of taste. So, you know, we always make fun of how bland white people's food is, and how, you know, they mess up easy dishes. But our taste buds have, to my understanding, more melanin in the base of our tongues than other groups of people. So even the foods we appreciate culturally have something to do scientifically with, you know, this chemical that's produced by the pineal gland called melanin.
Right.
You know, and technically melanin also has to do with our understanding of what the Dogon did, because in our eyes, the iris in our eyes is darker. There's more melanin in there. So that was that. We're not going to start with the Look, you know, Dr. Jeffries came here and he talked with you about it too.
You guys are so, I mean, but I have proof on this now. I might bring in one of the aliens and some proof. But the Dogons claim this information came from alien sources. This is what the Dogons say, and to dispute what the Dogons say about themselves is ludicrous as far as I'm concerned. You know, and we're going to prove it. Next week I'm having a show on the Dogon.
When we hear an interpretation of what they're saying from someone in between, what we get is a piece of information, not the real thing, based on our experience. We have to piece together stuff, verify over here. And the European cannot admit for the minute that Louis Latimer helped the man with the light bulb, or the man that did the technology for the third rail. His name is not coming to mind.
I know who you're talking about.
But the fact is that it's very difficult, because white supremacy is white supremacy. It's an ailment. That's how Brother Deacon Radcliffe puts it. He's a brother in Harlem, Catholic deacon. He calls it a mental illness. Be that as it may.
The religion of white supremacy.
The religion, I mean, it's the milk of, it's the steaks of, it's the french fries of, etc. And by the way, our women, black women, have to be very, 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 very careful about the foods they eat because the chickens and the pork and the beef are infused with growth hormones. And our women are blowing up, they're overweight, not all of them, but you find a mother who's overweight and you see the daughter's overweight and you say, wow, doesn't the mother know that the daughter is going on a pathway of illness? I mean, we're in a real, all of our people, every human being is valuable, born with gifts and talents. I'm dealing with our group, which suffers the most from ailments. And getting back to naturally 62, what follows is our natural way of eating. We don't eat everything. We can't eat everything because we would not be our natural selves. And that's a whole package that we have to begin to pursue. The knowledge, the health, the mother is the first doctor, is the first nurse, is the first chef.
And the creator.
Is right? The first nurturer. And we have to, as black men, begin to give our women the credit that they must get as people, as the entity that has brought us to where we are. Because, you know, we like the bravado, but at the same time, we would not be in a position of existing today if it wasn't for a nurturing mother, a nurturing wife, a nurturing aunt.
You know, speaking of natural, we're going to have a lot of natural food at the event.
Let me put this one. Let me put this one to you about the conversation we're having. Now, I feel that black people fall prey to that greed and selfishness, and that want to have the privileged things that people like Donald Trump strive for. Donald Trump to me is the poster child for white supremacy, and anyone striving for that, any of us that go against our nature as black people and become not self-serving, service to self is always a, I don't think it's inherent in us to be service to self, to be selfish. I think we as a people have always been giving, loving, and naturally, because of how we're made up by the melanin, how we're creative, we're loving people. We have that spiritual energy, that God-centered, that's necessary in order to really survive. And I think that's lacking in the Trumps of the world. But we strive sometimes to be a Trump-like, not
talking about material?
Materialism, greed and selfishness. When we fall prey to that, that's, I mean, like they threw drugs in our community and we killed each other trying to make money. And giving an excuse that, well, the white man put it in there, but that didn't make you sell it to your brother. And the biggest enemy in our community was the drug dealer. Yet today, that drug dealer has been elevated to the kingpin in the music. And instead of the love music that we produced when we were really black, or when we were natural, and being good to each other, I mean, the 40s, the 50s, and then on to that, the drug scene, and we killing each other, selling each other drugs. I mean, what do you do with the aftermath of the 80s and the crack epidemic and what we're dealing with today? How do we bring this natural input and to bring show the joy of being black again? How do we solve the problem of men walking around showing their drawers?
Well, I think one way you solve it is when people learn about themselves and begin to appreciate themselves. They won't dress like that. They'll feel embarrassed to come out of the house with their underwear showing, seeing the crack of their behind, and their pants falling to their knees. They'll be embarrassed. It's all about education and learning about your true self. And when you really feel black is beautiful and you understand and you embrace your history and your heritage, it gives you a sort of feeling when you step out into the world that you're not really worrying about anybody. You're not in competition with anybody because you know you come from greatness. You know your history didn't start with slavery. You know that you are on this planet for a greater reason.
But you've been around you've been around the best. You've been around the true kings and queens of our community. What about the other people that haven't been around, that come from a single parent home and their mother was on crack?
I think we lead by example, especially in the community. I mean, when A-Jazz first started out, it wasn't really wasn't political. It was mostly cultural phenomena. You know, Max Roach, Abby Lincoln, Lou Donaldson. I mean, he had all Grandassa models on many of his album covers at the time. You know, Art Blakely.
Roy Ayers.
Yeah, Roy Ayers.
All those people were before the 80s.
But these people, jazz of that time was the equivalent of what hip hop is today.
No.
Yeah, just that we didn't have it. Jazz was the music. I mean, what other music?
I don't think you can compare anything to hip-hop.
To hip-hop? You mean in terms of its influence?
The way they talk about our women.
Oh, yeah, but that's not what we're comparing. I'm just saying that the showmen and the entertainers, they had status in the world.
You know, hip-hop is basically low life as far as I can see.
Well, it's certain performers. Hip-hop, what you have today, was not always like this. We have the Public Enemies, the X-Clan.
We're talking about past, when the crack era came in. Now I'm talking about 80s on. We had the 80s to 90s, a decade of greed, the Donald Trump syndrome, all right? And all you had in the black community was crack and lust and kill each other.
Well, Winston, we did have some good hip-hop artists. They weren't getting the commercial exposure as some of the other artists.
That's because there were other people, the gangsters were being hustled.
The music has been hijacked.
Okay, there you go.
The music has been hijacked, and the lyrics, hip-hop, the Sugar Hill Gang, Sylvia and her husband, Joe Robinson. What happened with that is that was independently produced, and that opened up a whole market for black distributors and black producers, and that upset the music industry. Bob Lord can tell a better story than Brother Leroy, but the thing is, there was a pushback. When we talk about crack in the black community, that's the CIA bringing the crack in.
Yeah,
okay, but we can never forget that. We talk about the end result. We tend to talk about the effects of that thing, and when you talk about the effects, we tend to look solely at ourselves, as opposed to what happened to the Chinese. When the Europeans came into China, they brought in opium. All of them did. All of those guys did. The French, the Americans, and the British had a hand in the drug trade in China. So,
that's a weapon of war.
Weapon of war. You destroy the men, you take the fight away from them, you get them to think on a lower level, which is happening in mass in America. When the women are disrespected, devalued in America. I haven't been to Europe, I don't care about that. But they have been devalued. So whenever you look in the Post and the news, on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that area, you see this Caucasian woman, half dressed, going across the street, posing and whatnot, and a lot of Negroes by the post and hold on to it and look, you know. But the point is that in general, on TV, in the movies, the woman has been devalued. And at the same time, she's held up, the Caucasian woman is held up as the standard of beauty. So here you got some of us, many of us, who try to follow that standard. So when you say, what do you do about those of us who are not conscious, this show is an example. Gil Noble is an example. Nat Woods is an example. There are a few examples where we have to utilize media, and Gary Bird and Bob Law and WBAI. We have to utilize media to push the point of view that is is edifying, that's building, that builds up black people. It's a drop in the bucket, but it affects some of us. And if we didn't do it, none of us would be impacted.
Okay.
So we have to keep striving and set the example. What Ilambe said, Ilambe's shadow. You understand? what said Gage said, you have to set an example. And if that group, the Grandassa and the A-Jazz group, didn't set an example, we wouldn't be talking about naturally nothing. You know, we'd be talking natural biscuits and natural pork, something like that.
I like to mention something about your father. You know, I don't think Gil Noble would have been Gil Noble without your father.
Amen.
Alambe Brat.
Gil tells me
that
told
was
me that often. Yeah.
the hook behind Gil. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. Because all of those African-centric things were brought to Gil by your father.
Yeah, the African and the Caribbean segments.
I mean, that's amazing when you think about it. You know, and Alambe was about as black as you can get. Right?
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely covering, you know, for the, you know,
him and Wayne Rice.
Yeah,
that was another.
Yeah.
There were two of the same kind, man.
Brother Wayne.
Brother Wayne went on to be the first black on television with
Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
Yeah, the Hawk.
That was before.
We went to high school
Cosby.
with Wayne.
Oh, I know. I used to be the co-host of Brother Leroy on the Communicators. That's how I know about Wayne Grice.
Okay.
Because he would always pay respect and homage to his mentor, Wayne Grice.
Yeah.
And he would run off the list of the names of the other communicators and people who contributed to the show.
He was wearing a cape in the 50s in high school.
And Brother Wayne had a great respect for black women.
Yeah.
And
he was a charmer.
Oh, yeah,
Wayne was a charmer. Yeah, man.
Brother Wayne was a bad brother.
He was a bad brother.
But this event this Saturday is not just an event; it's a cultural experience.
Okay.
And
bring us back to our roots.
To interact with these people, these are trendsetters. Trends of people who dared to go out front and do what other people were afraid to do. And then after they went out front, create a whole industry of afros. Afro haircut. When I needed afro, I just couldn't go to Billy Joe the barber. I had to go to Black Rose.
Well, you're going back, when we go back to the Dwight, we go back to Beaux-Arts, which is our base, the Sugar Bowl crew.
Yeah, well,
all right?
This show is going to be fashion, history, art, and photography. Is paying homage to these.
I think you have a website for.
Oh, the website, they can go to.
I think we have it underneath your name. I hope you got that up there.
Yeah, well, they can go to the IlambeBrathFoundation.org. But really, if they want to get more information,
Peace out to Manhattan, and possibly somewhere in the near future, we'll be going live to the Bronx.
Yeah, but
hopefully they're talking about it.
They can always call the number on the flyer, which is 212-410-7892 and get more information. And they can go to Eventbrite. They put in Grandassa models at Eventbrite, you know, and they can get tickets right there.
And I guess you can walk up to the door, right?
Yeah, you can
and
also.
I was actually
is
born in a hospital across the street from this place.
Wow, 258 St. Nicholas. There's the police station there now.
Hospital used to be across the street.
Sydenham.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
1941.
258 St. Nicholas Avenue.
The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist experience. Next week, we're going to talk about the Dogons and the beginnings of creation, where secrets of, spooky stuff. God bless. Power to the people.
Power to the people. Correct.